Hello and welcome to another episode of the ACC Insider Podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. And Jeff, guess what?
What?
We officially have a bracket. The ACC Tournament bracket has been released. We are now less than 144 hours away from crowning an ACC Tournament champion. At this moment, we are recording this at 6:20 p.m. on Sunday, March 9th. Exactly 1 week from this moment, we will have an NCAA tournament bracket. We will be able to talk about who's going to be going where and sleepers and all that. But before we do, we have to get through 5 wonderful, crazy, out of control days. Unpredictable, I think, is the word that comes to mind to me when it comes to the ACC tournament. Duke is the 1 seed. Wake Forest is the 4 seed. Louisville and Clemson are on the other side of the bracket as the 2 and the 3 seed. And the way this thing kind of breaks and shakes out right now, Jeff, we could end up with a North Carolina Duke round 3 in Charlotte, 7 p.m. Friday, March 14th. Is that what you are rooting for here more than anything else in the ACC tournament?
I think so. I think so because, again, I think that would give Carolina one final shot to get in the NCAA tournament. You know, I said that all along. If they split their opportunities against Duke, I think you just got to win one of the two. And we didn't know they were definitely going to get a chance, and we still don't against Duke. But I think if they could get one of those two, yeah, I think that puts them in a decent spot, depending on what else happens around the country. I will say this. Okay. So when going through the ACC tournament storylines, Rob, let's go through 5 storylines that we're looking at. I'm going to start in the first round. Okay. Let's start on Tuesday. And my storyline on Tuesday is Leonard Hamilton in perhaps his final game. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping Leonard wins the whole damn thing. I'm hoping Leonard pulls a Dennis Felton-esque deal. Well, Dennis Felton won 5 games in 4 days to win the SEC tournament after a tornado hit in Atlanta.
Technically, it was 5 games in 5 days, but it was 3-3. Then they had a day off because of the tornado, and then they played 2 in 1 day.
Yes. So I'm just hoping Leonard can get some magic here and make a run in the ACC tournament. He's been so good for the game for so long. And, they open with Syracuse in the 11 versus 14 game, and they're the favorite. And they've been pretty good this year. Not what we expected out of Florida State, what we come to expect for a few years there. But I think he certainly can win that one. And then you get SMU. Why can't you get to Clemson in the quarterfinals if you're Leonard Hamilton and have some fun with this thing? Because, you're playing loose at this point. Your guy, Luke Laux, has taken over. And I like that hire. We could talk about that for a minute as well. A guy who played for Leonard, a guy who's been in the NBA. That's kind of the new.
Let's save the coaching the coaching stuff.
After.
There is some other coaching stuff that we have to get into. We can do that at the end.
Anyway, Leonard would be one of my first storyline that I'm looking at with the ACC tournament.
Yeah, the biggest storyline for me is obviously the North Carolina story,
Sure.
right? This is a team that has played like an NCAA tournament team for about the last month of the season. They kind of got burned a little bit with some of the losses they had at the start of the or the wins that they had at the start of the season, not looking as good now as they did at the time, Dayton and UCLA specifically. They missed on a couple opportunities to capitalize on marquee victories, and they are heading into the ACC tournament with a 1-10 record against quad one opponents. But the way this kind of breaks out, you get Wake Forest in the second round. That's a quad 2 win if you get it. And then you get Duke in the semifinals, which is obviously the best win that you can possibly get in college basketball during championship week is beating Duke. And North Carolina, if they want to dance, has it all right there in front of them. You beat the winner of Notre Dame Pitt, you beat Wake Forest, you beat Duke. Doesn't matter what happens in the ACC tournament title game. You win your next 3 games, and you are heading to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think you're right at that point. I think, certainly that's one of the biggest storylines is Carolina. Duke Duke getting the number 1 seed, locking it up is one of them. And I think they're going to be a number 1 seed even if they lose in the ACC tournament. I think they would be a number 1 seed. And one of the questions will be, where did they pick? If they end up, say Auburn loses in their first game and Duke wins the ACC tournament, could Duke be the overall number 1? And where did they pick for their regional? Did they pick Newark or did they pick Atlanta?
That's an interesting question. My guess is that they would probably want to go to Newark, but that could throw.
Why would you ever want to go to Newark? If you could pick between Atlanta and Newark, why would you ever want to go to Newark, New Jersey?
I think you would get a larger crowd of Duke fans in Newark, New Jersey. And the further away from the hotbed of the SEC, the more likely that you are to not have a 2 or a 3 or a 4 seed that is driving distance from the location there in Atlanta. That's why I would want to go there. I don't know what John.
But it's interesting. It's actually an interesting question because they'll have their choice. They've already made their pick. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if anybody other than John Shire and Duke knows what it is. But, yeah, Duke getting the number 1 seed or the number 1 overall seed, I think is certainly on the line here. Carolina having a chance to maybe punch their ticket.
Here's another one for you. Here's another one for you, Jeff. And Louisville and Clemson both finished 1 game out of first place in the ACC regular season standings this year. And they did that despite the fact that that this Duke team had a historically good run through the ACC, right? They beat the brakes off of everybody that they came across, and they are putting up a number where they look like they are as good as any team that we've seen in college basketball, literally this century. The last team that had an efficiency margin on KenPom as large as Duke's was Duke back in 1999.
Wow.
So it's been 26 years, literally this century. There's never been a year in the 2000s where a team has put up the numbers that Duke has. And Louisville and Clemson are 1 game behind them in the standings. And I don't think that either of those teams have gotten the credit that they deserve nationally for the success that they've had and the ability that they've had to be able to take care of business in games where it would have been very easy to not take care. Like you go on the road to Georgia Tech, you go on the road to Virginia Tech, you go on the road to Pitt, you go on the road to some of these teams where there is talent on these rosters. It's very easy to drop one of those. Those two haven't. Will they prove it? Will they have another opportunity to get to Duke in the championship game of this ACC tournament and pick them off?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can. Again, I think both of them, unfortunately, didn't get the credit that they deserve because the rest of the league just hasn't done its job, frankly. Mm-hmm. And I hate saying it, but it's the truth. But I think Louisville, what they've done, what Pat Kelsey has done this year is insane. Insane, the turnaround. Haven't they won as many league games as Kenny Payne won overall games the previous 2 years or something like that?
So they won 25 games this season, and combined, I think the 3 years before this, they had won 25 games total. Yeah. They were 25-73 in 3 years before this, and they were 25-6 this year.
Crazy what Pat Kelsey's been able to do, and I honestly didn't doubt it for a second when they hired him. I know you were, after going to the Bahamas, you were behind them 100%. Mm-hmm. And they've lived up to the hype. I mean, they've been really good, and I think they can sneak up on some people now, especially in the NCAA tournament. And Clemson, man, second straight year here, Brad Brunell's done a masterful job, and doing it without PJ Hall and bringing in Victor Larkin's been awesome, and we know what Jaden Zachary's given them in terms of toughness and defensive bulldog, and Ian's been awesome. Like their whole team, Chase Hunter, who we had on last week. They're fun, man, and well coached, which is no surprise with Brad Brunell. So those 3 teams. I guess the next biggest storyline would be, can there be a bid stealer? Because you've only got 3 teams locked in right now. There's only 3 that are locked in, and that's Duke, Louisville, and Clemson.
I got one.
Yeah, Carolina's on the fringe here. Is there anybody that you see coming out other than those 4 teams that could make a run and steal a bid?
Yeah, I got one.
Oh,
Georgia Tech.
I picked them preseason. I think they have the talent. I just think they haven't put it all together.
They've dealt with some injuries, but Nate George is an absolute killer, right? He is a really, really good kind of like big
Yep.
guard, ball screen point guard. Bayandongo is a big athletic guy around the basket. Lance Terry can make some shots. Duncan Powell is our friend Terrence Oglesby's favorite player in college basketball because, like T.O., he is bald, but unlike T.O., he has a puff of hair around the back underneath the
He's
headband that he
way better
wears.
looking than T.O. also.
It's the most ridiculous hairdo I've ever seen in my life, and I couldn't love it
But they got to
more.
get Duke. They got to get Duke in the quarters.
So yeah, but they've beaten Louisville and they've beaten Clemson. They are the only team outside of Duke that has beaten either Louisville or Clemson in the ACC this season. And they've won, I believe it's 7 of their last 10. All 3 losses were on the road. One was at Virginia, one was at BC. That's not pretty, but they also won at Wake Forest. I'm sorry, they lost at Wake Forest in that stretch, right? And with their guard play, with the size that they have, like I think the thing that Duke does is because of their size, if you can't match up with them physically, they are going to overwhelm you. And I think that Georgia Tech, as much as anyone, has guards that can match up with them physically. And with the switching that they put you through is they're daring you to kind of beat them in one-on-one actions. And I think Nathan George, as much as anybody, is someone that can beat you one-on-one. Now, I say all this when Georgia Tech played Duke at home in December, they lost by 26. It was also the last game before Georgia Tech went on their Christmas break, and there weren't any students there, so you kind of were at the disadvantage of like the environment. They always pick off somebody in McCamish Pavilion every season. This year was Louisville, so I think I'm not saying it's going to happen. But I do think that the pieces are there for Georgia Tech to find a way to be able to. Someone's going to have to beat Duke. Like Duke's got to lose for there to be a bid stealer.
So
It's got to happen.
I'm going to go with the Wake. I'm going to go with the Wake because they need it. They have a superstar in Hunter Salas who can go for 30 on any given night. And I think you're going to need that to beat Duke. I think you're going to need one guy to go ballistic. And maybe Hunter Salas makes some threes. I don't know. They've got more than Hunter Salas too. So they've been up and down. They've lost to some teams that they shouldn't have lost to. But I think they could play up here and win that big game. And, if they beat Carolina and beat Duke, you're in the championship game. I just want some intrigue. I want one team in the title game of the ACC that's not supposed to be there that can be a bid stealer. Like that's half the fun, to be honest, of this week is you need a few of those, even if they don't win the whole thing. You need a few of them just for the intrigue like I don't really want to see a Duke Clemson or a Duke Louisville championship
I
game.
do. I want Duke Louisville.
You do?
Yes. If we got a semifinals of Duke, Carolina, Louisville, Clemson, that's my dream scenario for the ACC because I think that semifinal Saturday would be awesome, right? And then you get to
You're
the
going to be
champion.
there too. You're going to be
Yeah,
there.
I'll be down there. I'll be down there for we're going to be doing a setup where we have somebody at every single one of the power conference tournaments, which is audacious and too much. And I don't know why we decided this was a good idea, but we decided it was a good idea, and we got to stick with it at this point because
I'm pretty sure this was one of my dumb ideas.
yeah, because well, the flights have been paid for and the hotel rooms have been booked, and those are non-refundable. So like the money's been spent, we might as well go at this point,
Yes.
right? At least they got good beer down in Charlotte.
Any
Give
other
me
storyline for you? Any other big storyline?
well the ones beyond that, it's all the coaching carousel stuff, and
Yeah.
let's get into that now. So,
Yeah.
obviously Leonard Hamilton is retiring at the end of the season,
Yeah.
and he has been. I believe I don't. Is it official yet? Have they announced it, or is this just you reporting it that Luke
No, they
Lux is going
announced
to?
it today. He had the press
Okay.
conference. We're recording this Sunday night. He had the press conference at I believe 2:30 today.
Okay. So Luke Lux is replacing Leonard Hamilton there. Quickly, what do you think of that hire? What do you think of that fit? And how do you think this is going to work for Florida State?
This is how old I am. I covered Luke's recruitment to Florida State. How about that? I mean, Luke's not that old, though. He's only 34. He's younger than you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is a rising star. And this new approach that's kind of happened here multiple times is going with these former NBA, not players who made him $100 million, but former current NBA assistant coaches. Started last year, really, Kevin Young at BYU. It's worked out well, but they've got a ton of money. And then Utah did it just now, hiring Alex Jensen. And he's an alum he played for Rick Majerus at Utah. With this one, Leonard Hamilton obviously vouched for Luke and was really behind that hiring. Andy Kennedy was in the mix for that one as well, the UAB coach. Florida State's AD, Michael Alford, played baseball at UAB, so that was one of the connections to AK as well. But they went with Luke, and the big thing is going to be Florida State's commitment to basketball. Obviously, there's a huge commitment to football there. But how big of a commitment will there be to basketball? Because I think Luke is a rising star, but he needs resources to be able to show he's a rising star.
Yeah, that's the key for all of these jobs, right?
Yep.
For everything we talk about, like, are you going to be able to afford to pay the guys out of the portal that you want out of the portal? Are you going to be able to afford the guys that are on your roster that you want to keep? That's the end of the story for a lot of these conversations. Other jobs that have opened up there. Let's start with the one that happened this morning, Sunday morning, as we record this. Kevin Keatts and NC State, less than 1 year after he led NC State to an ACC tournament title, and then the Final Four, Kevin Keatts and NC State have parted ways. I feel like this was always going to be the inevitable ending, but it feels like this happened a year earlier than I expected that it would have, maybe 2 years earlier than I expected that it would have. What can you tell us about that decision and how that situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's been in the works for a little while. And, last year before they went on their magical run and won the ACC tournament to get into the, NCAA tournament, then went on the run to get to the Final Four, there was a good chance he was going to be fired then. So, obviously you got a lot more money. And I go back to this, Rob. Here's my dilemma on this. And I've known Kevin Keatts for 25 years, since he was an assistant.
I've heard some of the stories.
Hargrave Military Academy.
They're not fit for the ACC Insider podcast.
They're not. They're not. But listen, Kevin's a good man. I think Kevin deserved better here. I think he deserved one more year and a little bit more money, resources to show whether he could get it done or not. There hasn't been a lot of success at NC State in a while, right? I mean, since probably Herb Sendek was run out of town years ago. They haven't really had. Sidney Lowe wasn't very good. Mark Gottfried had his moments, but he didn't exactly do it the right way. And Keatts comes in and he takes over. He inherits a program that, he had a lot of sanctions because of Gottfried. So, from the get-go, it was not easy for him. I think, again, the hardest part for me is just, you go to a Final Four, Rob. What would you rather do? Would you rather have a regular season where you finish first in the regular season, you win the league title, and then you lose in the first round of the tournament to, let's say, St. Peter's or Oakland? Or would you rather not be great and then go on this magical run and end up in the Final Four? Which would you rather?
The latter.
Yeah, you answered your question. So if that's the case, I don't know. I just wouldn't. I know it's been a bad year this year. I get it. I would have given him one more year.
Yep. Other jobs that are currently open, Virginia.
Well, let's talk. Should we talk about Jay Lucas?
Well, yeah, I was going to get there. So Virginia, and NC State, and then I think those are the two that are open right now, right? In the ACC, because Florida State is full. So Virginia and NC State are open. It feels like all the buzz is Will Wade to NC State.
And I'm not
I
sure
don't.
that's going to happen. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if Book Oregon will pull the trigger on Will Wade. We'll still see, obviously, some of the issues that plagued his departure out of college basketball don't look quite as egregious now. So we'll see if Book Oregon goes that route, or Ryan Odom is a name I've heard for
Mhm.
both NC State and for Virginia, and maybe for Villanova. Ryan Odom at VCU is going to timing is everything in the carousel. And Ryan Odom, if he can get in the NCAA tournament, especially, will have the ultimate timing. But he beat Virginia as a 16 at UMBC. He went to the tournament at Utah State, and now he might go again at VCU. So he's a hot name right
Anybody else in the mix at those programs that is worth discussing? Do you have any other information on either of those
now.
openings?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate too much at this point. NC State just opened, and Virginia's kept it awfully tight-lipped. They haven't actually done much, Rob, the whole year. Tony Bennett stepped down before the season. His buddy Ron Sanchez took over on an interim basis. Carla Williams, their AD, hasn't really done much in terms of reaching out to people out of respect to Ron Sanchez. So I wouldn't say there's a 0% chance that Ron Sanchez still gets the job.
Jay Lucas, you just mentioned it, goes from Duke to Miami in the middle of the season. Um, I understand why it has to happen this way, and it's part of the way that the portal works. It's part of the way that the college basketball calendar works. It's just it's a flaw in the system, but it will never irk me that you have a guy getting hired off of the staff of, and the context is that Duke is by far the best team in the league and Miami is by far the bottom of the conference, right? But it'll never sit right with me that you have that guy getting hired in the middle of the season when now he has kind of split loyalties. And now you have a guy who helped build this juggernaut of a program that's not going to be able to experience a run in March with that team.
That's
It
his choice.
feels,
That's his
yeah, it
choice.
is.
He had the choice, and he chose to get going because of the portal.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure there was pressure on him to take the job and get going now. That maybe, hey, you know what, this is your job, but if you want it, you got to come over now. You got to tell John Shire that you got to get going here with the portal, putting together a staff that can start working on the portal, all that. Because frankly, at Duke, I'm sure they have somebody else doing all that. With going through who the names are that could be portaling, all that. But yeah, I mean, Jay's a hire was an interesting one. You know, there aren't a ton of assistants that get those high major jobs. I mean, Duke has more than most, right? I mean, you look at Capel did it, and Wojo did it, and Chris Collins. They're the ones that you could say like, hey, in most cases, they're able to go from assistant to high major head coach. Jay's a little bit younger than a lot of those guys.
Mhm.
He's only 35 years old. Again, another one I covered through his recruitment. He was an assistant briefly at Kentucky before at Duke, and he was at Texas. Know him and his family well. I think, again, they're going to have better resources probably for men's basketball than Florida State, so that'll give him an opportunity. But we'll see. We'll see what type of staff he puts. A staff for him, both he and Luke, staffs are going to be like so instrumental, and it'll be resources and staff for those guys because things move so quickly, and you got to put together the right team, and then you got to be able to get the guys that can develop, coach these guys, get them together, all that. You got to be able to delegate as a first-year head coach, as a young first-year head coach. There's a lot. There's a lot more that goes into it right now. John Shire was able to do it, but John Shire was able to do it because he was at a place. He was there for so long. It was, yes, he had to replace Coach K, but he didn't have to learn a different place. He didn't have to hire a completely different staff. He had Coach K to, be able to walk down the hallway and ask him and bounce things off him.
Yep. You reported earlier, Wake Forest doesn't look like anything's going to happen there. And it looks like Virginia Tech and Mike Young is going to end up getting another season. So that's good. I think that it certainly keeps the level of humbleness and engaging conversationalists, I think is the way to phrase it, alive and well in the ACC. The ACC team media calls are going to be just as entertaining as they always have been. All right, I need your official predictions, man. The upset that you have coming out of this ACC tournament, and the final and the winner that you have in the ACC tournament. Give me an official.
I'm going to go Florida State to the semis. I'm going to go Leonard. Some Leonard magic to end this thing, and beating Syracuse, beating SMU, beating Clemson in the quarters, and making things interesting, making a cool little run. And I'm not picking against Duke. I want to, just because, again, I want to see something unpredictable. I like the craziness of these attorneys, but man, this Duke team is unbelievable. They are so much fun to watch. Yeah, they're the best team in the country. They're the best team. They're, as you've said, they're now the betting favorite. They're now the favorite probably to win the whole. I think they're the betting favorite. Maybe they're not.
Yep, they have been for a while. I'm going to go Pitt knocks off Notre Dame. Pitt knocks off North Carolina. Pitt knocks off Wake Forest before losing to Duke. And we have a Duke-Louisville title game. I'm just going to go with Louisville. I'm just going to do it. It's good. Duke's going to win, but I'm going to pick Louisville because if I end up being wrong, then everyone yeah, whatever. It was Duke. But if I end up being right,
if you end up right, you should just take another trip down to the Bahamas every year with Louisville.
If I end up being right, you will never, ever, ever, ever hear the end of it. Yeah. So you better be whoever Louisville is playing, you are going to be the biggest fan.
I hate to root against Louisville, but
I'm going to make you
do it because
I'm going to make you do it.
Yeah, I will only do it because of you. I'll tell Kelsey and Coleman and some of those guys, like, it's not because of them. It's just I hate it when you're right.
Listen, it's going to be a fun 5 days in Charlotte. I get down there first thing on Wednesday morning, so my very first game of the ACC tournament will be the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets and the Virginia Cavaliers, and I'm fired up for it, man. It's going to be a great week of basketball. This week of college basketball is as good as any week of college basketball, including the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. So enjoy your time in Nashville. I will enjoy my time in Charlotte, and we will see you guys next Monday previewing the NCAA tournament here on the ACC Insider Podcast.